You've made it to the NFL playoffs. Let's take a look at a couple of the upcoming playoff games this wildcard weekend and compare them to some previous data sets we have. If you're looking on the screen right now, I do have the 2019 playoffs in front of you here. The wild card round consisted of the Bills versus Texans, Titans versus Patriots, Vikings versus Saints, Seahawks versus Eagles. The one big difference, there are 6 games this year in the wild card round instead of the 4. That being said, a lot of times the percentages are going to remain the same as far as the outcomes. So, home versus away, 50% of the home teams won. Pretty much what we would expect. That being said, though, the more important number here is that of the 4 games, only one of them ended in a score that was more than a touchdown apart, and that being 8 points, so barely above that one touchdown and the traditional extra point, depending on how you want to look at it. But that was the Seahawks Eagles game, which was separated by 8 points. So let's call it 25% of the games were separated by more than 7 points. Secondly, the totals. We did not have any of the totals break 47 points, 47 being a key number for totals. Uh, that's something we need to make note of moving forward. Now we're going back to the 2018 playoffs, and let's take a look and see if anything jumps out at us here. So again, we only had one game separated by more than a touchdown. That was the Colts versus Texans, a 14-point game. Obviously a little bit more than the 8 points, so a little bit more decisive. That being said, the rest of the games were decided by 2 points, 6 points, and 1 point. So very tight wild card round matchups. This particular season, again going back to 2018, we saw 3 of the home teams win. That being said, though, the home team that won was the Eagles, and they won by 1 point against the Bears. And I'm not sure if you guys remember this going that far back, but they won off a lucky missed field goal. So the Bears actually were gonna win that game. Buzzer beater field goal was taken, and he shanked it. So could have again been a 50% year. So let's just kind of keep that in mind. As far as totals, though, again, the highest total on the board here was 46 points. So again, just shy of that 47-point total. Again, the key number. So just some things to expect as we get into this playoffs. Yes, there are 6 games, but as far as percentages, we should expect roughly 25% of the games to end in more than a touchdown difference, which means 1.5. So it's 1 to 2 games that are going to end up being separated by more than 8 points, or 8 points or more, I should say. The other, let's call them 4 games, should be really tightly contested games. There are some divisional matchups as well, and just about all of the games really should be lower scoring than their typical regular season scores would have been, regardless of the teams. 46 again for the last 2 years has been a pretty key number, being that there was the highest point total in either of the wild card round matchups, whether 2018 or 19. This year, I do think we see a little bit more scoring, just given the teams that are at play. So I'm going to switch it over, look at the board that Vegas has, or actually GT Bets has right now. GT Bets has the highest total on the board at 55, which is Baltimore versus Tennessee. That is a game that I could see being pretty high scoring. Tennessee's defense is absolute garbage. Baltimore's defense has been okay, but Tennessee's offense has consistently been able to move the ball and score uh, really at will on most people. And their only weakness is really Derrick Henry. So their strength, but if he can't get him going, if he's consistently being met in the backfield, they can't get that run game going, they really struggle. They do use a lot of play action, which is great. A lot of pre-snap movement, or some pre-snap movement at least, also to help out Ryan Tannehill, help that offense. But again, it's going to come down to, can they get Derrick Henry moving? If they can, that over-under, I personally would still lean the under, but I'm not going to be laying any money on that. That game is actually one if anything, I'd like to just sit and watch. It's going to be a good game. The second highest total, though, is the Colts and the Bills, and it's actually moved down. So it was at 52, it has dropped down to 51, so it's dropped a whole point. But more importantly, that 51 is a key number for totals, so it's the highest key number for totals. So if you want to jump on the under now, I'd recommend it. I personally did tease that up to 57, and the reason I teased it up to 57 is mainly that we could get these teams at 51. Buffalo's just a high scoring team. They can't stop the run. Indy loves to run, so they'll should be able to move the ball at least somewhat. I think at the end of the day, Buffalo wins this game because Indy's just not fast enough on offense. It's great to be able to run, but if the other team can score in 5 minutes and you're taking 10 minutes, you're going to put yourself at a disadvantage and you're going to leave yourself just a very small margin of error. So that being said, I would take Buffalo to win. The 6.5 is too much for me. I didn't tease that part of the game with the 51, but we'll get into that later. So for this one, I teased it to under 57, and I matched that up with Seattle. And when I grabbed the number, it was at 43.5, so teased it up to 49.5. So I was under on both of those games, kind of going back to what we saw in the previous 2 years worth of matchups. These numbers are going to be lower scoring games, or they should be at least. And if we can get the number of 51 completely wrapped up with the under 57, and then we can also get 44 and 47 with the Rams Seattle game, stay under that when we tease that up to, if you were to tease it right now, you tease it up to 48.5. So you'd still get both key numbers. If you can do that, I still do it. Jump on it right now before you lose those key numbers. That being said, the other way to tease this would be to take Buffalo down to just a half point. You can tease that with the Rams Seattle game as well, the under, that is. Or if you like, you can also tease it with the Chicago New Orleans game and get New Orleans down to -4. But we'll get into that here in just a minute. As far as Rams versus Seattle, a couple of key notes here to take, just throwing out there. The Rams are most likely not going to have Jared Goff for this wild card matchup. That being said, I don't see how they score. They barely beat the Cardinals last week, and the Cardinals were also beat up with the Kyler Murray. Just not even playing, and just his backup was terrible. But that being said, Seattle really doesn't have to do much here. They should be able to get to an early lead and then just kind of milk the clock away. The Rams do have great defense, and they're going to have to make either a defensive play or get some turnovers here in order to kind of swing the tide their way. The 4, I think, is maybe a little large for Seattle. Like I said, I know a lot of these games are still just decided by a point or two. The 4, it's not enough to tease, but it's too much to where I don't want to lay it straight. So I'm not touching the at least that side of it straight up. Really, if anything, I would just strictly stick to the over/unders here. The under, I'm sorry, 42.5, still doable. Like I said, I like to tease it because you're in a position here to get those two key numbers. And the last two games actually between the Rams and the Seahawks have stayed under 40. Between the two of them, the last 7 games each, they're a combined 2-12 to the under. So really a strong under trend here. I like it. I'm jumping on it. Next, we have Tampa Bay and Washington. Tampa Bay, Washington. Tampa Bay really does not match up well with Washington. Washington has a great defensive line. If you've watched football all this year, you've heard them talk about how great it is, and how wonderful it is, and how much pressure they can get. That being said, Tampa Bay, the times that they've had to play good defenses, they've they've either lost or they just couldn't move the ball as efficiently as they typically do. If you are gonna take this game, I would take Washington plus the 8 and maybe even sprinkle just a little bit on the money line. The over under, and this one again is not really something I want to touch. The 45, it kind of puts you out there in no man's land, and it really depends on how you think this game is going to go. If you think Tampa Bay is going to win, and again, in case you don't know, Mike Evans is most likely going to miss this game. So if you think that they're going to win, most likely it's because they blow out Washington and they put a huge number on the board, and Washington, puts in their 14 to 20, whatever it is, points, and they go over the total. If you think Washington wins, or if you think that this is going to be a close game, as it most likely will be, it's probably going to come out to a 20 to 24 kind of game, leaving you very little room for error on that over under right now. So again, I'm not touching it. If you wanted to tease it to 51, again, you could still grab the key numbers, but in this sense, just that Tampa Bay could get rolling, that 51 still doesn't seem like enough if they really go out there and Tom Brady puts up, 40 points, because then you're expecting Washington to just basically put up zero. So, not touching that one. Did discuss Baltimore, Tennessee just a little bit. So we'll move on to the Chicago New Orleans game. Chicago has been looking great. David Montgomery's been looking great, but keep in mind who they've been playing. They've been playing the worst run defenses. They played the Packers, they played the Lions, I believe they played the Texans recently. We can go back and look that up, but either way, I know for sure they played the Lions and the Packers, and those are two of the worst run defensive teams. So David Montgomery's been able to eat. He's been able to keep the ball moving. And this week they're going to play against New Orleans. The Saints have been great at stopping the run, and conversely they've been great at moving the ball and running the ball. So I don't think Chicago really has a chance to win this one. Could they backdoor 10? They definitely could. Could get garbage time where New Orleans is pulling out their stars because they're trying to stay healthy to move forward through the playoffs. The over under 47. Again, this should be a relatively low scoring game as we've seen. 47 is typically a key number, so if you feel strongly one way or the other, you could grab that. To me, I'm again gonna lean towards the under. I feel more confident if in this particular game taking the side and taking the Saints -4. You're grabbing a key number of 7, the less key number of 6, and again the even lesser key number of 10. But you're grabbing 2 to 3 meaningful numbers there. So that's the way I would go this one. Lastly, we have Cleveland versus Pittsburgh. So Cleveland versus Pittsburgh. One keynote that just came out earlier today. Cleveland's coaching staff, including Kevin Stefanski, is going to be obliterated by COVID. So Stefanski and 4 of his assistants are going to miss this game. That being said, Pittsburgh just lost to Cleveland last week, the week 17 of the regular season. Anytime you see a team lose to one team, come back around the next week, they usually win. And the reason for that is the losing team usually changes their approach, what their game plan is for that game, because they just saw what didn't work the previous week. The team that won the previous week usually feels like we know what we're doing, we know what the recipe for success is here. They go out, try it again, and then they're kind of at a disadvantage because they have to start counterpunching kind of in the at halftime and adjust for what the adjustments were. That being said, I think Pittsburgh wins. They actually started off as a 3-point line. That was before they told us that the coaching staff for Cleveland was going to be gone. It had gotten up to 5. Today, as soon as I heard the news, I grabbed the 5. But literally 2 minutes later, it was at 5.5, and it's jumped up to 6. And that's all within about 2 hours. The good news for this is that now it's at 6. You can tease it down to 0. So at 4.5, 5.5, you didn't want to tease through the 0. At 6, you can get it at least down to 0. The 47.5 is also something I'd like to tease as far as the over-under. The under is great. You can play it straight up, actually, the 47.5. But I'm throwing out these teasers because I'm sure that a lot of you are finding one or maybe 2 items that you think possibly could tease here and there. I want to give you as many outs as you can so you can pair them up yourself. But these are the ones that I feel really strongly about. So if I can get Pittsburgh down to 0, take the under straight up at under 47.5, or tease it up to 53.5, and that way we get the key number of 51. I doubt it even gets to that close to that number if you are going to play this straight, as I usually like to. Just grab the under 47.5. Last week, Pittsburgh was missing their quarterback. They took out a lot of their players early, a lot of their defensive players, a lot of guys that they were resting and just trying to get healthy. So last week, yes, Cleveland won. Don't let that scare you off. Pittsburgh should turn around here and get moving forward with the win. Again, the under is probably the stronger bet here, but if you want to tease it down to 0 and get Pittsburgh just to win and advance in the playoffs, I like that one as well. So just to recap really quickly, a couple of plays here. So it would be Buffalo at -0.5 if you can tease that. The under 51, again, another good tease. The under 42.5 for the Rams versus Seattle. The what we're looking at here, Saints -4 for a tease, or again the under if you want to go that route. And then we have Pittsburgh at -0 if you're teasing, or the under 47.5. Again, just so that you know, I am personally going to be teasing the Colts Bills game to under 57, matching that up with the Saints -4. Then we have the Rams under 47.5, or sorry, 48.5, matching that up with the Pittsburgh down to -0. So there's a couple of different variations there. I did play a few different routes. So anything you want to throw in there, any good nuggets you have that you want to share with the rest of us, feel free to leave in the comments below. There will be some articles coming out on our website here, which is aags.online, regarding different plays, different things we're looking forward to in the playoffs, some trends, stat lines, things like that. So check out the website, aags.online. Let me know if you have any questions. Find me on Twitter, and I will put everything in the comments below. And have a good weekend. Have a happy new year, and good luck this playoff season. Have a great day.